We want to welcome everyone this morning. We're really pleased you could come and listen to us talk about something we all really love to talk about. Right, Michael? This project has become quite near and dear to all of our hearts, so it's really great to be able to get to share it with all of you. I see lots of familiar faces here, so anyone from southern Alberta and maybe from farther afield might be familiar with the hamlet of BRAGG Creek. BRAGG Creek is a hamlet in Rocky View County in the southwest portion of the county, right on the gateway of Kananaskis. It's a beautiful place situated, nestled in the foothills, lots of trees, right along the Elbow River. It's long been kind of one of the jewels of Rocky View County, and lots of people have desired to live there throughout the years. The hamlet is about 500 people in the hamlet area, and then we have surrounding country residential north of the river and south. There's a strong connection to the environment for the folks that live out there and their heritage. BRAGG Creek is one of the oldest communities. It was founded in the late 1800s and has started as an agricultural community and has evolved into more of a hub for artisans and art galleries and outdoor enthusiasts and folks that want to live that back to nature lifestyle. And of course, it's not too far from Calgary, so there's lots of amenities and world-class hiking and mountain biking experiences because we're right next to Kananaskis. Planning in BRAGG Creek has always been a bit challenging. I've been with the county since 2004, and since I started there, it's always been, everyone's a little bit nervous to go out and do something in BRAGG Creek because you never know what you're going to get, because usually half the people love what you're doing, half the people do not, and it's difficult sometimes to find a good happy medium. In 2007, the county adopted an area structure plan for the area that looked at having a vibrant commercial core, a thriving residential community, and a country atmosphere in harmony with nature. There was a lot of challenges with that planning process, but it did get approved, and there's a lot of attachment to that plan, so nothing's really been done with it for a number of years. There hasn't been a lot of development in recent years in the hamlet of BRAGG Creek. A lot of this is because of servicing limitations in the hamlet itself. The hamlet has been on a boil water order for over the past 20 years, and there was no servicing. So really difficult to get more infill and encourage people to come when you can't have smaller lots and you can't get diversity of housing, you can't get seniors. There's a large seniors community out there that's really been eager and working hard to try to get seniors facilities. But that was starting to change. The county initiated, in collaboration with the province, a project to build a water and wastewater treatment plant and provide services to the hamlet. So things were starting to move on that front, and then 2013. And I'm sure everyone remembers the devastation of that period. And of course, in our little corner of the world, this was the hardest hit area in the county, was the hamlet of BRAGG Creek. It pretty much devastated the hamlet. You may have seen on YouTube the picture of the house smashing into the bridge. That was in BRAGG Creek. Destroyed most of the businesses and took out most of the infrastructure. So this is just a couple of pictures from recovery. Trees uprooted, infrastructure, roads, pathways, trail systems washed out. A lot of the homes were on private water and wastewater systems, and they were destroyed. This was kind of obviously a big turning point. 2 years after, the hamlet, a lot of it still looked like this. And it was like, well, what do we do now? The area councillor came to administration and said, we need to do something. It's been 2 years, we're still struggling, the community's struggling. What can we do to move things forward faster and get back on our feet? Because we feel like our community it's ugly, it's not the jewel it used to be. We want to get back to having it like that. We want people to come and want to be in BRAGG Creek again. So first we thought, okay, do we need to redo the area structure plan? Because there was policies in the area structure plan that had been put in place prior to the water and wastewater servicing that limited the size that you could go down on lot size in the hamlet. So did we need to work on that? So we did a lot of research, we did some discussion, we decided that just doing ASP amendments wasn't going to get us to where we needed to be. We needed an action plan, we needed a blueprint, we needed to give the community something that they could band together on and see and hold and be something tangible that they could work towards. So that was when the idea for a revitalization plan rather than just ASP amendments came into being. So we put out a request for proposal and we hired Matt Culhaney and MVH Urban Design to prepare the revitalization plan for the county. And so we have Michael here, and Ben Bailey was on that team. And I just want to recognize Jonathan Schmidt, who's not with McElhaney anymore, but he was our project manager on the plan and really instrumental. So I just wanted to recognize Jonathan and all of his work on that plan. So we put the team together, and the purpose of the plan was we wanted to reaffirm the community vision for the hamlet. We wanted to capture any new opportunities from disaster recovery and revitalize Bragg Creek into a thriving and desirable place to live, work, and visit once again. And this is a diagram of the 4 pillars of the plan that it's all based on. So economic improvements, policy amendments, community culture, and physical improvements. So now I'm going to have Michael come up and talk to you about the process that we went through and the key parts of the plan.
Welcome to climate change. It's here. And for me, to witness and try to support a healing process was phenomenal. Because when I came into this community with Ben, Johnson, Amy, and Jonathan, we still saw devastation 2 years later. And I said, wow, this is a lot more about trust. It's about therapy. And the trust had been, at best, eroded, maybe even gone. So we went through, and what I'd like to do is tell you that story. Tell you how we got to the hearts of the community and how, in a heartfelt way, we had to make connections. And we had to respect their property. And in Canada, we've got an incredible country, incredible communities with great character. And Bragg Creek is the Rockies, the foothills. This is where nations are built. So we started off, and Johnson, Ben were on the ground. We said, well, how can we get connected in a genuine way? And we all know we're engaged to death, using the expression. We've got all sorts of tools online and so forth, but they're not one-to-one, what I call a personal approach, a connected approach. So fairly fast-track process, as you'll see. Started basically in March, bam, we're done in October. And we had a community that was on fire at the end, to the point where I remember a business person came up and said, so what do we do now, Michael, when you leave? And I said, good point. So I'll tell you about that bridge, what we have in place. Because when somebody comes up, and they're a leader in the community, and they're saying, okay, is this another one of those shelf art pieces you put on the wall, you get the awards, and we're left with nothing. We're not moving ahead. So we had coffee chats, we had sounding boards, we had online feedback. So we had a number of tools for both millenniums, and the people without computers could come in. We had meet and greet, stakeholder workshop, and 3-day charrette, and storefront hours. Ben was out there. He met with the people, got connected in the coffee shops, maybe drank a little bit too much coffee sometimes. But I remember at the beginning, remember when Jonathan Ben showed up with the counselor, said, what are those young guys going to do? Man, they can't come in our community. So the trust so we had to prove ourselves as a team. So we did a 3-day collaborative workshop. One of the first things, and very importantly, this is a non-statutory plan. But we needed to do this to get to the statutory part of it, because we needed action. The community wanted stuff on the ground. We reversed its format. There's 39 pages and 13 actions up front. The background material's in the back, right? We said, no, this one's about action. We're going to put it up front, and we're going to put all that stuff that sometimes we said, oh, everybody has to see it. They won't even look at it. So we were saying, we're going to put the actions up front. We're going to change the whole chemistry. Did these rough drawings. I tend to draw a lot and try to visualize for communities so they get it. Oh, this is the upper land, that's the lower land. The lower land is susceptible for flooding. Look at Fort Mac, devastating situation. We have to get used as planners and as critical thinkers to this climate change on an annual basis. And we have to plan actively for it and design for it. Staging, project initiation, January, we were essentially done by September. Remember, sharp processes are good because people actually have a memory of the previous meeting. You come back a year later and said, who are you? I'm from White Rock. From BC. Oh no, one strike against you. But I spent a lot of time, I've lived in Alberta. I love the place because there's this frontier survivalist, we are pioneers, and we're coming out of this with determination. So it was great once we built the momentum with the community. They were saying, now what do we do, Michael? Now what do we do, Ben? Now what do we do, Amy? And the counselor was beside themselves because Liz never experienced this. Actually, positive response from the community. We did the background analysis. We actually did market analysis. Something I embed in every one of our processes is an economist on my left elbow. But the problem with classic economics, you extend the past to the future, guess what? You get some of the same stuff. I still have to get them in a different headspace of innovation. And then policy framework. In other words, follow with policy, don't lead with policy. Because the community members look at you and go, oh, some more paper. I don't even understand what you're saying. I know you have a master's and PhD. We don't care. We're about action. So the plan itself, as I mentioned, pretty straightforward. Split the community up into character areas, so recognize those spaces and places, very important. There's two things, place keeping and place making. We tend to jump to, especially on the design, oh, we're place making. You first have to understand the spirit of place and the design of that to take it to the next level. First priority, do design guidelines. Oh gosh. If you've been to Bragg Creek lately, there was, I call it the Starship Enterprise, the new gas station that landed in the community. I showed up and I said, oh, how did that get there? Well, it fulfilled all the development application requirements, but it's the wrong thing in the wrong place. So we had a great precedent to start to say, we need this. In other words, not to create a Disney-esque set of guidelines, but really build something off what is Bragg Creek. One of the first things, and these are part of the 13 recommendations, is to get something, and what we sensed was, how can we get the community active? How can we get them engaged? They were all about trails. It was the gateway to the Kananaskis. Like, let us start to connect the trails in our community, because we are about trails. There already was a trails committee. So we wanted to build that momentum, and we wanted to get people out there actually building their own community. The entranceway, oh, what a piece of work. It's a kaleidoscope of intersections and chaos. So one of the things that we were working on is how do we bring organization to that corner? We're still working on it. How do we still bring that rural character, frame it? And as you know, there's disparate parts in Bragg Creek you can't figure out. But there are some good pieces that we can build on. The flood resilience design, huge. How do we elevate that first non-habitable story? When actually the first experience, when I walked over towards the river, I said, what have they done here? They've just dumped boulders adjacent to a magical river. It was quite, how many engineers in the audience? There's a couple. And then all of us have to facilitate, as I do. I love them, they're black and white. They do stuff, they build stuff, but they tend to be insensitive in their design. So you have to bring landscape architecture into it and give it the visual that the community says, that's what we want. So how do we wrap this armoring? How do we wrap it to become an amenity and not a wall to the river? That's where some of our ideas came in. And then how can we develop an infill? As you see here, we created an incremental infill that really didn't disturb the character of the community. Because one of the fundamental statements we realized, it was nestling a cabin in the woods. That is Bragg Creek. And they're very narrow. If you look at the original cabins, they have quite narrow logs because they cut down the local trees. So it has an individual character, and we wanted to do what I call seamless intensification. We have that in cities. But we have to, as we move out to a rural area, we have to have the same respect for open space and intensity, but at a different level. So we tried to visualize these, and it was well supported from a narrow lot. And then incrementally, how would that develop over time? So it's not that wipe out the forest, we're going to come in with cluster development. No, we were going to follow the pattern that it was always there. And then in a lane situation, you could have coach homes, you could split the lot, but it was a sensitive intensification that really respected the character over time. This is one, we sat down, we said, hey, we're gonna redo the core here. We're gonna embrace the river. So here is what we call the Bragg Creek Adventure Center. We have two choices: to back off from the Elbow River and say it's over, or embrace it. So the idea of this adventure center, and actually the CBC science guy lives close by, and he came up, I was recognizing his voice, what's this idea of an adventure center? And I thought, the new executive director of the adventure center is standing in front of me. And Mr. Harper actually has a house just down the Elbow River, so I was going, can't fund it now, but at the time, we're thinking of this was a good idea. And when you're doing this kind of revitalization, we're talking about a slalom course or a place for kids to get down and embrace the river. And also, this was a commemoration of the power of water in Alberta. And I said, has anybody else done this in Alberta, where they're embracing the river, the hydrology, and the history of this incredible resource versus backing off and creating an armor wall? At the same time, as you'll see, this whole center is intensification, seniors, infill with hotel, a whole centerpiece called a central park. So building that whole central asset with parking, gateway to the Kananaskis, really building a character place. Again, not high density, but infilling that place. And then how would we connect? This is if you've been there before, this is the alleyway between the two strip malls. How can we actually engage that space and actually create that walkway? Start to bring and revitalize the area, and over time, the two strip centers would redevelop. How can we bring that rocky mountain flavor to the area? How can we create an improved rural streetscape? And how can we transform that using sustainable, again, a ditch motif, bringing in character, but not losing that great country flavor, whether it be those of you who are on trail bikes and so forth, really create a comfortable space that meets that. And then visualizing the center, how it could transform over time with this spine between the two strip centers into that park and a view and engage the river. One of the things that came up as we were doing the plan was Rocky View was saying, okay, so we can do a trailhead. So I sat down and I said, okay, let's just design it because we're going to build it. And what I love in a process when you aspire community, what do we do first? We hadn't even finished the process yet. Rocky View was in there, Public Works, what can we do? So let's build a trailhead. What would that look like? Remember, start with what you need, expand to what you want. So this was a pilot project, part of it's built. White Avenue, as we know, Alberta transportation, when they have a highway, it's difficult to detune it, to bring it down to a community level. So we visualized how can we incrementally, call it, put it on a diet, still allow access to the community, commercial, again, a rural kind of commercial on the north side, and really develop in character with the community. Another, again, priority that will be built over time. Now, to the other parts of the community, connectivity was key. They wanted to walk and bike. So part of our connectivity was to build on the trails that were in place, world-class trails. So finally we came to, as part of our process was about action, but out of that, we really created a structured implementation plan of 13 top priorities. And that wasn't an unlucky number for us. It's a lucky number. We went through each recommended action, the key steps, key personnel, the measure of success. What a novel idea. Actually create measurements of incremental steps, whether it be a report card to council on a regular basis. What are the priorities? And then work with the community to establish what those priorities are and act on them. And this is the degree of detail we went into to look at when it would happen, how it would happen, and then to review with the community. So there was full buy-in for each of these 13 steps. And it wasn't 45 steps. I just looked at a recommendation, a plan for a community action plan. I think there must have been 150 recommendations. I got lost on the first 5. So the next steps are interesting. And let's measure. These aren't next steps. These are actually moving ahead. In November, we're going to go to council on November 8th, hopefully, tentative date. We're going to go to council with the ASP amendments. At the same time, we're going to go to council with the design guidelines. They're done. And something Amy can elaborate on, we have an implementation committee that's been active, engaged since May, and has a facilitator moving them ahead with subcommittees. So this next steps is what I call a now plan. It's underway.